was involved in a group in New York. It was called the Bliss Group. Women showing up as the source of bliss in the universe.
Bliss, okay.
It was a very wonderful, empowering, fun group. It was a group of women like I had never known before, and all of us were career women. It was in the days of you could have it all as long as you were willing to do it all. So we were all running ourselves ragged. We came together to look at best practices. How do we do this and still stay sane and still have time for ourselves, a time for pleasure? And we puzzled it out together. In those days, there weren't all the support systems that are in place now. And so in doing that, I met some phenomenal women who were still my friends. And when I came to Florida, what was desperately missing for me was a women's group. And I'm doing my first lecture down here on healthy food, and there's a woman sitting in the first row of this audience. And afterward, and I'm talking about why diets don't work. Okay. How they just absolutely don't work and what we need to do. You have to remember, going back 20 years before this conversation was out there. And she stands up and she says, "We have got to know each other." I said, "Okay." And we start to chat. And the next thing she says to me is, "So how do you like Florida?" And out of my mouth, I don't know this woman from Adam, out of my mouth comes, "I'd like it a lot better if I had a women's group." Don't know her. She says, "Funny you should say that. I'm forming a group you're in." That was the beginning. She was a coach.
Is that Marsha?
No, that was actually Susan. In those days, her name was Corbett. It's Klein, Susan Klein, who was one of the founders of Coach U, the founders of the ICF, involved in this women's group. There was another woman in there. She and I started a company called Path Consulting, and we wrote a program called Vision Heart, based on that which can be seen rightly cannot be seen with the eyes, it must be seen with the heart, which is a quote from Le Petit Prince, The Little Prince. What we did is, as we wrote it, we would write a chapter, send it to them, we would work on it together. It began with creating a sanctuary for yourself, a place where you felt so whole and so honored and safe that you could do sacred work, that you could begin this process of inquiry. And then from there you began to look at your past, look at what are the values that you told your story first. How do you tell your story at this moment in time? And then you looked at the values that you had grown up with, the ones that you would embrace, the ones you had rejected, all the ones all around you. And from that you created your own core values. And from that you created a values compass to navigate by. And from that you created a sense of purpose. And then from there you looked at the shadow side of that. What happens when you preach your purpose instead of just be and live your purpose in yourself? And then from that came how do you be in the world? So that was it became this whole journey. It took us a couple of years to write it and to take these people through it.
How did you get there? I mean, here you are. You're a marathon runner,
right? So
obviously that you're driven already, and you have a son who's ill. What do you think? Can you give me some idea of how you were able to pull that up and say, "Okay, I've got to figure this out, and I'm going to"?
I think that was exactly it. I had to figure it out. If there's anything that I'm not, it's a wallower.
Okay.
I'm just not. It's like, okay, this is what's happening, what am I going to do about it? It's not that I don't feel or think about what's going on. It's like, okay, so I'm journal keeper. I've been keeping journals since I'm 5 years old.
Is that right?
And so, which is how all the poetry books came to be. They come out of that journaling process. I teach journaling, actually teaching it at FAU here, Lifelong Learning Center, in the spring. And I've taught it all at Florida Atlantic University.
Okay.
And so I believe in discovering yourself on the page. I believe in getting quiet enough to tell yourself the truth, to hear the truth, to actually allow whatever is deep within you to come out, to name the fears. I used to call my early journal books my complaint books or my bitch books, because I would just dump what was wrong. And people, if you picked it up and read it, you would think, oh my God, she's got such a miserable life or a tough life, until you looked at the dates, because it might be 3 months between entries. And then I realized, well, all I was doing was giving power to all that negative expression. There's nothing wrong with speaking what's so, but then I learned how to never leave the journal until I could think of something positive I could do in that moment. And that changed everything. So it might be call a friend, it might be take a nap, it might be create a new project, or roll up my sleeves and dig deeper into one that I'm already involved in. But what I learned how to do was always look at what's the next thing for me to do? What's the next possibility? What am I not seeing? How do I turn this around?